Hello, everybody. You're hearing me, Kermit the Grog's voice first. And that is because this is an old podcast me and the Weeb Cabal did, well over a year ago at this point. This was kind of the proto that time I got reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcaster. So the original feed this is on, I don't believe is hosted anymore. This kind of went dormant, especially when we started this one. And I recently unearthed my old collection of them and listened through it, and I thought they were really good. And I wanted to rehost them here where maybe some new people can hear it, and maybe these will be prequels to future episodes of this very podcast. So Brad, Isekai Sensei-Sama, is going to do his best to remaster these, because this was recorded back, especially the first one. Our equipment gets slowly better as Brad gets equipment, and we stop using my terrible equipment. So I guess this is both a, hey, this is a long time ago, and an apology that the audio quality may not be the best.
I think this first episode we recorded with my Blue Yeti. So a single mic with all of us sitting around.
I don't even think the first episode is that, because that's before you have the bug to record podcasts.
Was it?
I digress.
Well, that's a key point. Everybody should know this is literally, you're about to listen to the first podcast I ever did.
Correct. And we go on to do, I believe, 4 more that we will be hopefully releasing here on this feed in the future. And maybe if I get the fire in me again, there may be new ones if there is interest, or I just have a need to do another one. So with all of that, enjoy Kermit's Pop Culture Talk Zone. Cue the intro. It's the Kermit Zone with our very special guest star, you, the listener. Yay! It's time to fetch your headphones. It's time to check the mics. It's time to chat pop culture on the Kermit Zone tonight. It's time now for a shake-up. It's time to go sit tight. It's time to start recording on the Kermit Zone tonight. Why do we always come here? I guess we'll never know. It's like a kind of torture to have to tape the show. So now let's get things started.
Why don't you get things started?
It's time to get things started on the most sensational, conversational, observational, confrontational. This is what we call the Kermit Zone. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pop Culture Talk Zone. It's me, your host, Kermit the Grog, and I'm here with new hosts. I know, change in the world is scary, but I'm bringing it to you. Why are you making that face at me? You're making this a lot harder. I'm here with my good friends, Ben.
Hello.
And Brad.
Hi.
We formed the triumvirate of Weeb Club. Weeb Club represent. And today I've brought them on to the Talk Zone to discuss Canon. This is an episode I've been wanting to do for ages with any number of people, and recently we had this conversation during Club, and it's like, you know what? I'm infected with quote-unquote hashtag content, so let's record it for everybody to listen to forever. So we'll dive in and see where it goes. So, I feel like as we're coming this from anime, canon is always super important. When things are not canon, when anybody sees something as filler, it's like, oh, that's lesser, I can skip it. I always thought that was kind of weird, because it's like when you watch a movie, a thing that's just, this is a movie, there's nothing else in it. It's not like, well, it's just a movie. It's not like it keeps going. It's just, here's the movie, it is done. Is it canon? Is it not? I don't know, it's a movie. But when it's like an episodic show or something, it's like, well, this doesn't count. I don't want to watch it anymore. I don't know. I just thought that was weird.
I think there's something interesting in there, because having something be filler doesn't necessarily mean it's not canon. But you do find a lot that things that are set as filler do fall out of canon at some point, even if it's considered canon when it airs or whatever. You'll get to a point where they're like, well, the main story went this way, the source material went this way, so that particular episode, we're just going to strike that from the record, basically.
It's an interesting problem in anime and manga, because in anime and manga, you almost have that, You have the singer-songwriter, you have the mangaka who draws and writes.
Who's literally the voice of God in the situation.
Yeah, and it's not like an American comic where there are 15 different versions of the X-Men releasing in parallel, done by different teams, but you're just used to that because you're used to comics being a big team effort, and you can have a writer from here and an artist from there. And the canon is looser. The canon is tied to that series, but when they do it in anime, when they take a manga and they make it an anime, if they add or subtract anything, they have to be very careful that it can just totally be ignored.
It can just not count.
Yeah.
That's an interesting comparison to American comics, because it's like there are an infinite number of Batman, and because everybody has their take on Batman, and they're allowed to just go do that, but you don't just have like, oh, this is Otis' take on One Piece, but this is this guy's take on One Piece. Like, that's not a thing. It's just, this is one person, and this is their story, and it can command these like giant multimedia empires from literally one human.
The thing is, though, is that Japanese media, manga especially, doesn't not have that. It's just normally it's not corporate sanctioned, because you have the doshinji, which are incredibly popular. Lots of people write them, lots of people buy them. They buy them directly from the person who's writing it and drawing it, but it's not going through a company like the main work is.
Well, that's actually a good jump off point. It's like that, if we're doing our definition of canon, isn't canon then, but people still love it.
Oh, and for anybody who doesn't know what
probably.
that word is, it's basically fan content.
Oh, which word?
Doshinji.
Okay.
Dojinshi.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. Ben, noted Japanese somewhat speaker of the three of us.
Say it one more time.
Dojinshi.
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 So forget what I said earlier.
You just mix some syllables. Toriyama did.
Dojin. Done. That's what I know it as.
But I wonder, how important is it that something is canon to you guys? Do you guys read fan fiction, or do you do dojinshi, or?
I dabbled with certain things I was into when I was younger, and it was mostly just I have a hunger for this particular media, but there isn't more of it yet, so I'll take it wherever I can get it, even though it doesn't count.
Have you ever read a fan fiction or anything like that that you liked better than the direction the canon went?
I'm going to out myself on this because technically I've already outed myself with my regular co-host, because I literally met through that. So I spent a lot of my life in a My Little Pony fan group. And part of that, and it actually fit this canon thing well, is that there are comics that they've been making for years now. They're still going on. Literally, like, the newest season is just the comics. And there's a bunch of time where the comics, it's like, I like this better than the main series. It feels like it's getting the characters and the situations better, and it's just a lot more fun. And the joke I always made about it is it was like The Lion King, and it was just like, everywhere the light touches is yours, Simba. But in this case, it's like the creator of the actual show going, everything where the light of the show doesn't touch is yours. It's canon, but as soon as light touches it, gone. And it's weird having these, in this case, I guess, to the dojin, you're getting officially sanctioned from the company stuff that as soon as the show goes in that direction can like dissolve in an instant. And it's weird in that the one that always sticks out to me, just a really particular example, is like in the pony world, like dragons are very rare for like a bunch of seasons, like nobody knows about them, and there's just like a comic early on where it's just like, in one of the cities there is like a ghetto of dragons living there that are the like underclass and held down by these magical horses somehow, and it's just like, okay, I guess. And of course, I mean, like, that wasn't canon, even though it was an officially sanctioned thing. And I think about that sometimes, but also it's like, I feel like that can present things where it's just like, this doesn't fit at all, but also just like, everything's firing on all cylinders here. I wish this was a part of it, but it isn't.
Yeah, for me, I always have a weird relationship with canon, because for media that I'm really into, that I really sink my teeth into, like I get into the world and I'm really interested in it, I like to explore those, not necessarily sanctioned facets of that universe, that fan content that comes out. But I run into this issue where if it's not explicit that it's like outside of canon or something like that, I'll get into it, and then something will happen in the actual canon that directly refutes whatever that was I was reading, and it suddenly like kicks me out of it. It's like, oh no, I had put that previous media into my mind as canon because it wasn't clear that it wasn't, and now I'm all screwed up from it.
It connects in, like you've mapped out the space of where this is going in your brain from that, and when it doesn't match that, it's kind of like a little, like, right. I guess it's, the phrase would be like headcanon, I guess, to an extent.
Yes. It's very easy for me to pick up headcanon because things make sense in that fan content. And you go, oh, of course, it'll flow that way because that's what makes sense in this world, in this situation. And then you get into the actual canon later on, where it directly refutes whatever that was that you put in your head as canon.
And accepted.
And it just shakes the foundations that you've built for that world.
Can I give a weird example?
Go for it.
So, are you guys you're familiar with Lord of the Rings?
Correct.
Okay. Seen the movies at least?
I'm vaguely aware.
You have?
What's Lord of the Rings? No, of course.
Okay. So, in Lord of the Rings, there's a big question of canon for a lot of things because Tolkien had copious notes and various versions of the stories, and some of them contradict. And the Silmarillion was published after he died, so his son had to sort of choose which things went into the Silmarillion, which was canon. One of the things I was looking into the other day is what Tolkien actually had to say about the Entwives. This is getting very specific and very nerdy.
What are those?
So, do you remember the Ents?
They were tree people, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
They were all male.
Okay, I did not know that. Thank you.
And their race was dying because they had misplaced the Entwives. They did not know. The females of their species lived apart from them, and they didn't know where they went. And so the whole species was going to go extinct because they couldn't find the females anymore.
Very reminiscent of an actual old folks home.
But somebody, like multiple people, wrote to Tolkien during his life and asked him what happened to the Entwives. And long story short, he said, they're probably dead, but I don't know. And I was like, I cling to that to this day because I love the Ents and I want there to be more Ents. But if Tolkien had said the Entwives all died, they'd be dead to me.
Yeah.
And it would be over. But because he left that open, they're still alive. And that's the magic of canon, is it makes it real.
Isn't that wild? And that just leaving a door open means you can put anything you want there, but it still feels like you want, quote unquote, an official thing to fill that spot. But also, as soon as it's something bad, you're like, well, I've been holding on to this. It's like your headcanon thing, Brad. Actually, if it's in, it's like when the thing that happens finally happens that would dispute what you got, and it's worse. Not even just that it's not the same, but it's worse. You're just like, well, I want my thing to be true.
Well, and it's like, why do I care so much about
what this man said?
Yeah.
You can literally believe anything about it because none of it's real.
Yeah, none of this is true.
Like, that's what I with all this. It's like there's the two ends of like, if I'm told this matters, it's canon, it fits in, it is an official thing that fits in the story that happened, despite the fact that none of these stories are real and none of this happened, and it can literally be whatever it wants to be.
Well,
why are we so like hell-bent on like, we want that so bad?
And there's another weird wrinkle to this where we talk about like Batman, where at a certain point, once a story is old enough and once the companies no longer own it and the copyrights have expired, then it's free game. There is just, now Batman's not, it's still under copyright, but we know what a Batman story is. It's always a Bruce Wayne gets his parents murdered, becomes a bat and fights crime.
Well, you say that. You say that, but and I'm not talking specifically right now about like the weird wacky stuff that they throw in of like the what ifs and all.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. But more specifically, you know, I think us as younger, on the younger side of, you know, the media in general, we have a very specific idea of Batman, of, you know, he's up on the rooftops, he's in the shadows, he's knocking people out, he's tying them up, he doesn't kill anybody, no guns, no killing. But for a very long time, a very large portion of Batman's history, he killed people and he shot people. He used guns. Like, that was canon for a very long time, and somehow they switched it in, the 80s or whatever, and somebody will be very mad about me getting that wrong, but...
no one listens to this.
At some point, they
Sorry,
switched
people
it.
listening.
They switched it to, he doesn't kill people, he doesn't like guns because his parents were shot, and then all of a sudden, we grew up with that version of Batman, and now that's the canon
His
Batman.
canon changed.
But I wouldn't, if somebody came along and said, okay, Batman uses guns and kills people, like Zack Snyder. Let's say, for example, if Zack Snyder came along and gave Batman a gun, it doesn't ruin Batman for me. I still have my Batman story.
But it feels wrong. Like, this is actually from what you were saying of, like, the Batman of, like, what feels right and how much you can stray away from, like, what is a Batman story. Like, superheroes, because people try to make those, or, like, a video game movie where it's like, there are certain things I'm looking for, and I know you have to stray away from what the source material is because the source material is a video game and this is a movie, but, like, there's a certain amount that you walk away from what is quote-unquote canon, of what makes this what it is, where it just feels like... It feels like you can wander too far. I mean, I had the last episode I've recorded of this very podcast, we talked about video game adaptions and, like, talking about the Mortal Kombat movie. And, like, that movie felt like it just wandered just far enough away from the source material.
The recent one?
Correct, the recent one.
Okay.
And I feel like it links here. Just like it didn't feel quote. I mean, not that it's ever going to be canon. It's a movie outside of everything. It's not like continuing whatever the heck the main timeline is. Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's even crazier than that because they made it's always been a bunch of different things, and now they made all of the timelines canon. And, like, that was my favorite thing to have. That my friend who's such a freaking persnickety whatever about the history. Now it's like literally all the timelines are now canon. There was literally a character who was about timelines and different things happening in each of them. So all of the games are now canon. F off, whatever.
And I feel that's an important thing. I was just thinking about this when you were talking about the Lord of the Rings canon, in that, like, if Tolkien had said this concrete fact, then that's how it would be. But if we think about how media spreads out over everything, there's sort of like 3 different ways that canon plays out. You have the kind which I think everybody thinks of when they think of canon, which is the very strict, like, there's one company, like a Disney or whoever, who says, this stuff is canon, that's how it works, end of story. Then you have the kind where you can sort of explore more in that universe. A Lord of the Rings kind of thing where even if you say, like, Christopher Tolkien says, this is canon, here I'm saying this, the world itself is so large, the continent is the world, the timeline spans so far that you can sort of drop stories in wherever, and they can be true, even if it's just your own headcanon or fan fiction, but they could be possible within that world.
They fit
because of that.
They don't bump anything.
And then the big one, the last one, is where the actual company says all of it is true, like your Mortal Kombat. But the key example that I was thinking of was the Warhammer universe.
Oh my god.
Oh god, I thought we were going to get into Star Wars, but I want to do, give it to me.
Literally in Warhammer, everything that happens in every form of media ever is true.
It's all canon.
And they don't go, oh, we need to figure out how this all fits together. They just go, oh, these stories go along with each other. They're in this particular timeline, or this story doesn't fit with anything. We're just going to put that out there. I played a Warhammer video game, having never been in any Warhammer media.
Are we talking about Warhammer 40K?
Well,
were they space?
Yeah.
Okay, probably 40K.
And again,
I don't know too much
I'm not
either.
really well versed in Warhammer. I played one video game and then read the wiki about that video game for 4 hours because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I played that game, and then after I was done with it, I wanted more information because it sort of ended in a cliffhanger-y way.
It sounds like Space Marine.
Space Marine, yes.
Okay, there we go.
And I started looking into it, and the first thing I find is this doesn't fit with any other stories. They were literally just like, we want to do this. There's some connections to other things, but this guy who's in this story isn't actually part of any of the other stories. And so
they just made a new chapter of Space Marines for this.
And it's out there. And GameWorks was like, yep, that's how it works.
See,
Oh, I have a story bit from GameWorks. You go, Ben.
there's an interesting thing buried in there where canon can only exist in the presence of an authoritative source.
Ooh, good point.
So if you have there are other stories that almost become archetypal, I want to say, like if you go way far back where we have no way of even knowing who the original author is, a King Arthur story. A King Arthur story is Arthur, who is the king who was destined, or the king who was promised, and then you got Merlin helping him out, you've got Guinevere, eventually you get Lancelot, who's going to cuckold Arthur, and
Spoilers.
spoilers, yes.
Sorry.
But you can't have an Arthurian. There is an Arthurian canon, but you can't really have. You can make as many King Arthur things as you want, but Warhammer 40K, GameWorks, is that who it does it?
Game Workshop, I
Game
think.
Workshop.
Yes, correct. Sorry.
Close enough.
Game Workshop could come along tomorrow if they wanted to and say, no, actually, this is the canon. We own the right.
Well, you know what's wild about them actually in particular? I have a little piece of information that makes this even more interesting, is back in the day, they were uber stingy with who got the rights. It was very specifically doled out. And sometime a couple of years ago, they just said, anybody who wants it, come get it. And they just said, we're going to beat there's going to be a lot of schlock with every so often, there's going to be a gem. And that was what they based on. Any mobile stuff, Steam garbage, doesn't matter. It's yours. Have the Warhammer 40K license for literally anything.
Meanwhile, Space Marine, I thought was a good game.
Yeah, Space Marine existed from the before times when they were very strict about it.
I just couldn't figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, Warcraft and Starcraft were supposed to be Warhammer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember learning that and like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't want to do this, but it's too important not to. I feel like unless you've got something, Ben, it's time to do the Star Wars bridge.
Oh, no.
I don't want to stay on it long, but I feel like it's important.
So, something that I think we can bridge into Star Wars with is I find I'm going to sort of forget about the fact that it's Legends now and just talk about the expanded
Well, I mean, that's its own thing, is that someone can, the governing body can just go, all this stuff that counted, it don't count no more.
Right.
But does that make those stories not still, like, if you read them and enjoyed them, does it mean you don't enjoy them now?
I think it's poignant, though, because you mentioned, how Games Workshop was just like, we don't care anymore. There's going to be schlock, but we just want content out there because we want people to enjoy our brand, right?
Hashtag content.
But the thing is like, the expanded universe had so much content, but most of it was sanctioned. There were people who were looking at when all the licenses went out and we're going, okay, does this actually work? Does this fit? Now, I think there was some stuff that did fall outside of even expanded universe canon.
Starkiller was stupid.
Well, it was
agree.
it was like Andrew was talking about with the ponies. It was canon until George Lucas made a movie that contradicted it.
Well, right, but it's still like there were people who were checking it for continuity.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about Games Workshop saying like people are going to put out crap and it's okay, like the EU had probably not as much content as the 40K universe, but had tons and tons of content while still keeping that stranglehold on continuity for the most part.
I don't know if I'd say as strong as a stranglehold with the strength that how much those things come back. I mean, it's like, why does our brain, it's just like, it not being canon, it's like, whatever side stories you were reading, they were never going to show up on stream with Luke. That was never, ever going to happen. But
there was a chance.
But there's something, that's it. That is what, because that's the thread that gets severed when you say this isn't canon, is that small hope. And like, I've been there. I had that with the Pony comics. I had this other thing where it's just like, I love these characters. They don't even have to do something important. Like, I just want somebody to show up in the background. That's all I want. And it never happened. But that hope that there was that little thread that because I kept up with this side thing that I did enjoy, it would play into the main thing. I feel like that even drives people to like, I tried to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. back in the day, and let me tell you, it was a waste of my time. They were never important to the mainstream of the movies. They never played back into it. None of the Marvel TV shows did, really. They had tiny little, like, threads every so often, but it was never actually it never paid off. But it was always that thing of like, well, there might be something that if I don't watch it, I won't know it, and it won't be as cool.
Spoiler alert: did Coulson ever come back?
What do you mean?
I mean,
did he die again?
In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he was back, even though he died in Avengers.
I never watched enough to know why he came back.
He was so important that all of the Avengers were like, we're going to fight for the entire Earth because he died. And then when he's back alive, he never shows back up and says, hey guys, thanks for fighting for the Earth because I died. I'm okay now. That's a huge, like, you know, Your set Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon within the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But
it's dumb.
There's such a large gap in what that reality would be. Like, why? Now, I didn't watch it, so... but why would he not...
Say something. Why would he not pop back up just to say hello?
Right.
Yeah.
These people who were distraught over his death.
I can't believe, like, I came into this conversation thinking I was going to eventually argue I think canon is dumb and should be done away with. I think the entire concept is terrible.
Okay, continue. I like where you're going.
But I'm kind of coming away with there is a certain magic that, like a certain magic spell that canon casts that makes it possible that this is real. And it's important for things to stay consistent within that.
Okay, cool. I'm going to jump off of that from what I was saying. Do you guys know in improv the concept of yes and? Mm-hmm. I think that's what's important through all of this. The Marvel movies work because they do yes and. They didn't plan perfectly all the movies out until Thanos shows up and they have the Infinity War. Anybody who says that is a crazy person. But you know what they did? They always yes anded what came before. They said, what happened, happened. We're going to acknowledge that it happened and we're going to work forward from there. When you break that, when you go, the thing that happened before didn't happen, or you kind of muddle it unintentionally or poorly, that's when things are just like...
You break the spell.
You break it. Like, that was what... again, I didn't want to get into Star Wars, but it's just so easy because it's so freaking big and archetypal of things. It's like, that was what was the problem from... God, I don't remember any of the names. The 8th one to the 9th one. Was they didn't yes and it, and they just said, all those things that happened there, F that. That didn't happen. And that sucks to be told the thing that happened didn't happen. That time that you spent watching that, it didn't matter. Even though it was a cool story. But it's like... that sucks to hear, you know? And I feel like that's what good long-term storytelling is being able to yes and what came before it.
I think there's also...
And I think that's what true canon is the ability to go, the things you saw before happen, and we're building on those. We're confirming that the reality you hold in your head is consistent, because the real world isn't always like that.
I think what I'm thinking is sort of a continuation of that, which is like, when you... So, Star Wars is a good example. You know, you watch the original trilogy when you're a little kid, and you're like, this is awesome. There's lasers, and they're flying through space, and that guy's got a sword made out of light. This is freaking awesome. I want more of this. And so you dive in to the expanded universe, and there's so much stuff. You're a little kid. You have all the time in the world. You can just absorb it all, okay? And as you're absorbing that, not only are you enjoying the stories as they unfold, but there's also that part in your mind that's going, this thing that I'm consuming through a comic or a novel,
a video game,
could at some point show up in other media as a TV show or a movie. These characters that I'm becoming involved with, I can see in a different space, and that's exciting to think about. And so, like, I know when I was young and reading the, you know, Heir to the Empire and all of those different books, and I was going, oh, when episode 7 comes out, Mara Jade's going to be in it, right? Because she's in the books. Obviously, that's going to happen.
I want to put on record that Ben gave a knowing nod to that name, and I have no idea who you're talking about.
Well, you should listen to my podcast.
Dude, I download it. I'm going to be on it. Well, plugs come later.
Ben, you have another podcast?
Plugs come later. We'll plug.
Yeah. But yeah, there were certain... for me, it's not even so much that I wanted to see them in a movie. It was just, I like this story. And I think at the end of the day, what I'm coming down in favor of is multiple canons.
is canon just the thing where somebody references something you love and you go, wait, I know what that thing is too? Is that what canon is?
I think canon is the consistency of a fictional series of things.
But I guess that's more for this, like, not Pandora's box. What's the cat in the box that may or may not be dead?
Schrodinger's.
It's like Schrodinger's. That was what I called the pony comic. It's Schrodinger's canon. This may or may not be canon. You can hold on to it. It may one day not be. It may change around. But it's that possibility that somebody else making the sort of the most canon-y canon will go, yo, dude, that thing you like, I like that too. It's in the main boat now. And there's something really great about that.
I don't really. There's definitely something to be said about like sharing the canon of a story with other people, and especially complete strangers. You know, that hook of like, oh, that thing that you know, I also know. Are we best friends now?
Yeah.
But there's also there's a part of me that's sort of like doesn't care about official canon. When we talk about the expanded universe, which is now Legends because Disney decided that's how it was going to be, when that news came out, I didn't really go, oh no, the entire EU, all of that time was wasted. No, I go, no, F you, Disney. I'm still on the EU track. My headcanon is the EU. Your stuff sucks.
I would say, yeah, Disney presented you not with... And to Disney's credit, they didn't discontinue the publication of the EU.
Right.
They rebranded it Legends. They kept it going.
And I don't think the new Star Wars suck. I just don't think that they are great.
It's Star Wars. It's more.
I'll fall on this sword. They suck.
Okay.
You're wrong. I don't want to fall on a Star Wars quagmire. This happens on this podcast too much because it's too easy to talk about.
They're entertaining movies.
Let's talk about the Bible.
Let's talk about something less contentious. Let's talk about the Bible. Book of Mormon. Did it happen?
No, it was fake. The Book of Mormon is from a charlatan.
But we have
the
to-
Book of Mormon canon.
We have
we have to do the Bible conversation.
Because Ben and I were talking about this earlier today.
Okay, I was excited. We one of the things that caused this conversation was talking about canonicity in the Bible, and I was fascinated.
Okay, but
But
I
the
think-
thing that's not just dumb nerd stuff, that literally shapes the world we lived in for hundreds of years.
I think the Book of Mormon route is a bit more entertaining.
Yeah, 'cause
and
it's not
less
real.
contentious.
Because we don't live in Utah.
But I want Ben to finish his thought on this before we jump.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh God, what was my
I
thought?
don't even know. I got distracted by Mormons.
So Disney is continuing to publish.
Oh, yeah.
But Disney
they're
presented
calling
me-
it Legends.
Yeah, Disney presented me with a choice almost. Like I now hold in my head two simultaneous universes. One where Luke did not successfully form his Jedi Academy, and it ended with Rey. And then one
We had the Jedi Academy.
he
ended poorly or
And
ended
we just
positively.
screwed it all up.
successfully.
There
I'm
you
doing
go.
air quotes, but there's another though where everything didn't go horribly wrong, though the universe remained mired in war for the next 100 years or whatever.
And went horribly wrong eventually, and then got back, and then went horribly
Yeah.
wrong again, and
But ultimately, it was a more
have
like
to have continuing conflicts.
Yeah.
if you ask me which I preferred now, having seen them both, in my mind I prefer the Star Wars Legends, and it
We can
didn't
call it the expanded universe.
expanded universe.
Legends.
It didn't take away anything from me
Dinosaurs.
though. But I like that it's that thing though where Disney, the authoritative source, and this is where it gets sticky.
Yep.
Because I don't think Disney, this is going on my political soapbox a little. I don't think Disney really has any right to claim to be the authoritative source. I think when George Lucas abdicated that responsibility by selling it, there is no more authoritative
Well,
source.
to be fair, I don't know if George Lucas was the authoritative source.
Yeah.
Well, there is
after
that.
The first 3 movies were out.
There is that.
Star Wars. My argument is always that Star Wars was a series that was not built to hold all the things that it ended up holding.
He was the man with the rubber stamp that said this can be part of it.
Yep.
So, while he did not write the bulk of the stories we enjoy or have anything to do with them, he did approve it, and he did reject things. Like, he's the reason we'll never know what species Yoda is unless Disney decides to tell us. But that's another interesting point though, because like there does come an instance for me where it's like Tolkien is Middle Earth. If it doesn't matter who eventually acquires the rights to that. If they're not Tolkien, it's not canon. It doesn't matter how many books Christopher Tolkien publishes.
You know, something that strikes me now is, in what you're saying, we, as the fans, ultimately get to decide what we individually hold as canon. And we get to do that because none of this is real. It's all fiction.
The Bible gets a sticky.
It's an interesting...
The Bible gets through. We don't need to bring the Bible up again.
No, but
joke.
that's almost what I'm getting to, because actual history, you know, you hear the classic phrase, history is written by the winners, right? Actual history itself is a canon of events that actually happened that certain people are saying this is canon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas in a lot of cases, it's not. It's not fact.
Well, and I was going to say,
It's not the full story.
if you wanted to throw out the religious text but keep talking about other things, like there is, you know, an American canon of literature. There are a bunch of people who are in charge of curating what is and is not real.
Right.
Do you think we're drawn to wanting canon in media and such because we can't get it in life, that we know we can't ever fully know the story of what happened before us? We will literally never know for certain. So having something we can go, this is the bounds of the box, and I know what the bounds are, and it's nice.
That's an interesting thought, and I want it to be true, but I also don't think that if it is true, it's anything conscious at all.
No, it is definitely not conscious. It's very subconscious.
Because there's basically no one, us included, that would think about that and go, oh, I can't know actual history, I'm going to grab onto something.
No, but
it's have to be some kind of innate feeling that everybody is just... Because the fact of canon is very pervasive in, like, people who consume media.
Correct.
It's a very important thing about fake stuff. Yeah. And it's sort of strange that we put so much stock into things that are completely fake, beyond the realm of, this makes me feel good for a little while. It's entertainment.
Because we feel like we have some level of power over it, or we don't over the world at large. Like, you can, to your earlier point of, like, history and the winners decide it, like, I was reminded of a really wild thing. There are 2 sequels to Halloween 1. And that is wild to me. Made decades apart. And it's not like it's a reboot, it's literally Halloween 1 happened in both of them. And then there is the years later follow-up of Halloween 2. And then there is the years, like decades later, that came out a few years ago. That is one where Halloween 1 happened, but the original Halloween 2 didn't. This is Halloween 2 kind of now. And that's one where it's like, was canon redecided? Like, it kind of erased it by virtue of just, well, that one didn't happen because it would mess up the story on this one. And now you get to decide. It's not even just like we remade it and you get to figure out. It's literally you have one tent pole, and then decades apart, it's split. Somebody can just make another movie in a series years and decades later and just change the flow of the river.
You know,
because it doesn't matter. Why are our brains drawn to it? Why do I not want to watch anime movies? Because they never count.
Because as mad as we get about canon and, like, making things be in canon and people pushing things out of canon, imagine how hard it is for the people making these movies and books and stuff to have to deal
it's stupid
with all of that.
I shout because my brain is dumb and I want to understand why it's dumb and make it stop being dumb.
It's epistemology.
What is that?
That's what I was looking up on my phone.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
paying attention.
Struggling to remember the word for it. It's epistemology. How do we know what we know? We want a truth. And this is going well, like, beyond the realm of canon, but, like, it will frustrate me until the day I die that I will never know what a dinosaur looked like. There are certain things you can't know. There is no canonical dinosaur.
I've been saddled with cursed knowledge that I will carry until the day I enter my grave.
You know what they look like?
No, I've never thought about the fact that I will never know for certain. That thought had never occurred to me, and now I'm weighed down with this concept.
But that's what it is. And then I also have this kind of, like, authoritative socialism I practice, where I do think copyright should expire one day. And though you should be free to make your own Halloween movie. You should be free to say, I'm making a Halloween movie that assumes Halloween 1, 2, and 3 are real, and that Michael Myers' mask is one of the cursed masks from Halloween 3.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I would write that if it weren't for these copyright laws, you know?
Is that set in the same universe as The Mask?
It should, yeah. Like, how cool would it be if you were free to just do these things?
I mean, you are. We've seen it. Like, people online have pulled it off. It doesn't mean you're going to get paid for it, or they're not going to get really angry about it, but it is possible.
But Disney can make an Alice in Wonderland because that was there before Disney.
Anybody can make an Alice in Wonderland. Anybody can make the majority of the movies they make, and they're usually knockoffs.
Yeah. And it's... I don't know. That's why I don't necessarily... I respect authors. I don't have a lot of respect for the companies that follow the author and then decide what's canon. I don't care what Disney says happened to Luke Skywalker. Disney wasn't there. But
presumably, the actual history of the Star Wars universe could be known to George Lucas. He could have picked up a history record that came from a galaxy far, far away.
But that's the idea that
so much right now.
there is something to that, though, because that's my problem with the Antwives. Like, I would legitimately mourn their loss if Tolkien told me they were dead. But because he didn't know if they were dead, they might still be alive.
But that means nobody knows. The man who knows doesn't know, which means nobody knows.
Which is, yeah, I mean, that's better than getting the answer I didn't want. But it's truth. It's like capital T truth that we're looking for in canon. We want somebody to tell us what actually happened, even though none of these things
are real, and you can literally decide whatever you want and start telling everybody, and you can make things... You can make things real. I'm going to go back to tell a dumb story that these two will not care about, but is one of those things where just, like, over time, a dumb thing people in a fandom believed became real. So... Coming to my pony van again. I apologize. So, long ago...
There's no windows in here.
It's really hot. I had to turn the AC off because we're recording. So, in the freaking first episode of the bajillion ago when Season 1 came out, there was an unnamed, like, sea serpent character with a mustache. And then one day, remember back when it was funny to post YouTube's auto subtitles and the funny stuff that came out of it a billion years ago?
Yeah.
Somebody just took a screenshot of watching that, and he was on screen, and it just said the phrase, Stephen Magnet. And the fandom just started referring to this random sea serpent character, who we never saw again, as Stephen Magnet. And then one day, years later, after it had just generally become accepted by the fandom, they called him that in the show. This dumb thing based on a single image, born out of a YouTube auto subtitle just being kind of funny, became quote-unquote real.
Okay.
And what the heck does that mean anymore? Like, that's the thing. It's like you have the power... more than you have to shape legislation in a meaningful way, to shape the things you enjoy watching in sometimes really weird and stupid ways.
This is obviously the Jungian collective unconscious of pony theory.
The problem with you telling that story is that now you've cracked my seal.
Go for it.
On Five Nights at Freddy's.
I love it. Give it to me.
Which Ben will have more information
He
on.
will. He read that book. I listened to his podcast.
Hooray!
I also read that book.
And this is a little contentious today, finding out that the guy is...
Oh.
What's his name?
Scott Cawthon.
He's the worst.
How do you say that?
Cawthon. Scott Cawthon.
I kept calling him Scott Coffin.
It's C-A-W-T-H-O-N, Cawthon.
At any rate, however you feel about him in particular...
Currently, yes.
You're welcome to your opinion, but there's a long history with the Five Nights at Freddy's game of Matt Pat with Game Theory putting out theory videos on Five Nights at Freddy's, and then Scott coming back and going like, oh, well, you got this right, but this is wrong, and just changing shit because he wanted to.
Canon is wibbly wobbly timey wimey. It doesn't matter.
And so
where's Matt Pat's writing credit?
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same thing that happened with your pony stuff, is that the fandom was sort of, they incorporated what they were talking about into actual canon just by the very nature of it becoming a meme, basically.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the magic of canon. Like I don't know much about My Little Pony, but I do know.
I don't blame you.
I do know that they were famous for incorporating a lot of the fan stuff into the show.
It also incorporated, which is neat, of like it's that thing in other series have done where it's like the earlier stuff didn't happen, but it kind of did. Is that like characters from Generation 1 from the 80s would show up in a somewhat different form, but it's neat. It's one of those moments where it's like, oh man, I love the Smooze, and the Smooze is showing up now. It comes back to that, like, that thing that I liked that was specific. Oh, you know it too, that's really cool. Like, it's that moment of, like, that thing that you watched somebody else did too and was like, yeah, that was cool. It's like when somebody talks about Homestar Runner, I'm like, oh my gosh, I spent too long of my time in elementary school watching that. It's really important to me. And somebody, like, going, like, that thing that you did actually happened and was cool.
And was real.
And was real and was good is really gratifying.
Yeah. Well,
Good might be a bit of a...
Well, that's the thing. Like with
I have strong words.
like My Little Pony, Homestuck, all like
Homestuck.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
I said Homestar, not Homestuck. I want to be clear.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not saying Homestar was bad.
Okay.
I'm saying in general, just because other people are aware of it and you have that connection with them doesn't mean that the media that it came from was necessarily
No, but it gives you the positive brain chemicals.
Correct.
It's a validation.
It's a validation.
Yeah. And it's part of the magic of it where the community throws out all these things into the ether, into the soup, and then whatever they pull out is real now. Whatever the creator says, like, you know what, I like that idea, it's canon now. It validates that person and it's real. And they've, like, that's something of the magic of canon. There is... fan fiction can be enjoyable, but it's not real until somebody
can make it real.
Yeah.
It exists in the spaces in between until it is disproven. Even then, it can still be a good time. I have a fun monkey wrench that I throw into all of these. Is the only person I record with it knows about this, but I seem to bring it up every episode. So I'm now going to talk about pro wrestling. I'm going to continue talking about dumb things only I know about. So we're already just talking about canon where somebody's writing a story. And I guess we can fit this back into Tolkien, is what happens when actual reality affects what becomes canon and what canon is moving forward. With J.R. Tolkien is he died, and any canon that wasn't hammered down just became fuzzy and impossible now to become a truth. Am I not wrong in this statement?
Yeah.
So the wildness of this in pro wrestling is that because it is this weird space between a storytelling and reality, and people can get hurt, and that can just change stories. I still think about this, about why wrestling is one of the wildest things, is they're still around, a group called the Dark Order, who are like based off of Scientology as a cult of like, you're a loser wrestler, come join us. It's like a team, you'll have buddies, but they were like a villainous group. They were clear, it was like, oh, they're brainwashing people, they're trying to recruit them, like it was very villainous. And one day, this guy shows up who is the Exalted One, who's like just super like driven and mean to all of them, and it's like propelled them to victory, and they would just kick the snot out of people and use their numbers to their advantage. And then in one day, in actual reality, that man died. And they went from, because he went early and was uber beloved by literally every human being on Earth that had ever come in contact with him, that whole group of the Dark Order instantly became good guys, because who would boo them after they... Yeah. And I'm saying, like, this, like, not, it wasn't a storyline, because sometimes storyline people die in wrestling. Like, this man literally passed before his time in his, like, as he was reaching his prime. And that reality changed the canon path of the story because something like that happened. And I think that, and to the Tolkien and other things where it's just like, if freaking Ichiro Oda, the author of One Piece, dies, I don't care that he left his notes. The ending of One Piece is going to be the most contended thing, like the Bible.
Or say,
until we meet him in the afterlife.
Miura with Berserk.
There you go, exactly. He literally took the ending to his grave. I don't care if he left notes, it won't feel real. You're talking about Tolkien died and left notes, and even then, Ben has talked about, we don't even fully take those as real. It's wild.
I love how you're shutting down my argument before I can even tell these people.
Oh, which was your argument? Oh, sorry.
About, I think that that these authors, we talked about this
Oh,
before.
they leave notes.
The authors should, write out an outline, and
if God doesn't speak, it's not real. Or at least
tough.
that's how we think with our brains. I don't care if he wrote it on a page. If his son is reading to me, it didn't make it into a finished product. We don't know if this was just like, he was kicking around, but he wasn't super clear about it. We don't know that.
If you're going to use that argument, God gave revelations to Paul.
I know I used God. Oh, God, I opened myself up to that one.
He was like, here's the ending. It didn't happen yet, but I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. And that way, in case people don't, have everything figured out, they'll have the information.
We can't escape Bible canon and canosity.
We could talk about, less contentious things like Ragnarok or something. But,
There you go.
I don't know. Even if you leave an outline, it's better than nothing. Sometimes depends who gets to write from that outline.
True.
But like in the case of Christopher Tolkien, he did a pretty good job.
Isn't that the best example?
But
for
aren't you
what I'm
always?
saying?
But aren't
Yeah.
you always like? I mean, I didn't read it. I'm not into that. Like, don't you always have this pang of like? Would it be the same if proper
Listen,
Tolkien was writing this or
I
not?
don't
And you
know.
it's always having that doubt in your head of would this be the same
don't-
if the guy or the person was writing it?
I don't think anybody read the Silmarillion and was like, oh, this wasn't directly from Tolkien, so none of this matters. No, they read it and went, that was too long and boring, none of this matters.
But some nerds did because
No.
that's how nerds were in the back of the day, and they sucked.
We read it and we were like, but the orcs, Christopher, are they elves? Where do they go when they die? That was one of the things Tolkien never figured out himself, was if the orcs are corrupted elves, do their spirits go to Valinor when they die with the elves?
So if God can never speak, why can't we make things real? Why do our dumb brains need that? Why can't we just decide on our own what these things are? Maybe it's just because they're not ours. We didn't do that.
It's really a personal decision, and I think a lot of people just don't think about it. But, like, for me, and I think I've mentioned this a couple times, like, I don't care so much about actual canon. Like, there's a component of, like...
Do you want to go watch the Great T-Race right now, Brad? Do you want to hold by those words?
Of sharing
I'll put you to the sword.
that universe with other people, but especially like in regards to the EU, the expanded universe, not the European Union.
Thank you for the clarification.
Like, I enjoyed that, and so I'm holding on to that.
He did not enjoy the European Union.
I mean,
Europe didn't join the European Union. That's why Brexit happened.
I didn't get there yet. I didn't get there yet. So.
Topical, yeah.
But, like, I think if people were like, thought about it a little bit more and were introspective on it, I think a lot of people would come to the conclusion of, oh, if I enjoy something, then that's fine. Like, the canon lets you share with other people, but your individual enjoyment of something shouldn't, and I say shouldn't, but
It
that
shouldn't.
might be too finite for people.
No, that's the word I've used.
I don't think it should inform your enjoyment of any particular work.
I agree, and I was 100% ready to make that exact argument. But as we talk, there is a magic to that. There's an authenticity almost to the single author
Yeah.
telling you how it is. There's the singer-songwriter versus the pop star.
I shout because I'm angry at my own brain, because I can logically think I shouldn't be affected by this. The concept of canon is stupid, but it shapes how I enjoy things and what I want to watch and what I not. I mean, the thing that I start with all this is that, like, when you're watching an anime and there's an anime movie, it's like, I don't want to spend time watching that. Whatever happens in it doesn't matter. The main bus line will never refer to what happened to it. It won't inform anything that'll happen later. Like, that's changing a little bit more now. Like, we still want to watch it, but, like, Demon Slayer had its train movie where that's literally the next arc. It is literally, hey, we took the thing that is from the manga, the word of the creator, and then made it to that. It's not like the My Hero Academia movie or, like, any of the One Piece movies where it's like, oh, they might have said some things, but, like, nothing in those movies actually matters.
I wonder if there's a component of this to the introvert versus extrovert spectrum.
I'm excited. Lay it on me.
Because
Willingness to try new things almost.
no. In terms of, like, adherence to canon and how you feel, how important you feel canon is. Because I'm more on the introverted side of the spectrum, and it is a spectrum. Come at me. And I lean towards my personal enjoyment of something. There is a part of me that is like, I like to share the experience with other people, but my own enjoyment of any particular thing that I'm consuming is mine first, and then it will expand out from there. Now, you're talking about your dumb brain and you're shouting about it. Maybe
shout about a lot of things.
Since you're farther towards the extrovert spectrum,
we are in a strange corner of logic now that the canon nerds are extroverts.
But you say that, but,
I know.
I
understand the point you're
maybe
making.
it doesn't fall strictly in line with like I want to go out and meet people, but more in line with like
I don't want to talk to people who are crazy about canon. I don't like them usually.
The crazy people, the people who are crazy about canon, are being extroverted by going online and commiserating with
being
other
vocal
people
about
it.
Yeah.
There's a component to sociability.
They're seeking community. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though it's not like a traditional extroversion of I want to be near other people, I want to go out into the world and meet people, like there's still...
It gives you something in common to talk about.
Right.
I mean, that's literally... I'm sorry I keep coming back to this, everybody, especially you two in the room with me. It keeps coming back to Pony. It's like, that was what made it so easy to meet people, because you always had... No matter what else you were talking about, you always had a shared thing that you could talk about and that you were on the same page for. This is why I think furry conventions are wild, because it's like, what do you have in common enough? What is canon that you have enough to get together and talk about to people?
Well, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, the canon does hold the tribe together.
Exactly. And the more it spreads, and you can go off in different directions, but it always gave you a bedrock of, I know there's this thing that we share that we have in common. I think that's important. And even though I'm shouting about it, I'm also someone that doesn't always think that a story should be fully beholden to its canon to the point where it is like bound by it too much. Where it's like, sometimes I feel like it's important to just write through it or write around it to do something that is fun or cool in those moments. And some people are like, no, it has to be this. This is what the canon is. You can't break it. And I think I don't think something should be straitjacketed by it, but I think it is important because we talked about validating, going, that thing that you read happened, and we're going to acknowledge that it happened and move forward with it instead of just going, that didn't happen. Because if you're doing that, then it feels like, I feel like I'm overdoing it by using the phrase gaslighting, but it's like that thing that you thought happened didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I know in media it's not actually that important.
I think, beyond my line of introversion versus extroversion, I think there's the kind of people who cling on to canon so hard because they've adopted that into their personality.
I've met those people. I hate those
Star
people.
Wars fundamentalist.
Right.
Yes,
right,
that's
yeah.
a very key
And
word
so
to use.
Those people obviously are going to freak out when Disney says, hey, guess what? Half of your life doesn't matter.
Part of your soul isn't real anymore.
Right.
That's the downside of canon being part of your identity.
Which is
don't make your part of your identity a piece of media.
Which is getting into the religious side.
I was going to say capitalism, which is literally an episode I want to do on this show about how do you feel about giant corporations controlling the things you like and how to come to terms with that, which I haven't come to terms with yet.
You just really want to focus your audience right down and laser focus.
A lot of the times, I guess, opening the curtain, especially these two I don't record with, this is the first time, hopefully we do it more in the future, usually a podcast comes down to, I've had something thunking around in my head for a while, and I mostly just want to armchair therapist myself to my friends to try to get to some conclusion about this, or just some new idea about it. And I feel like that's what we've done here. I had a long time thinking around ideas about canon and the way that my brain is beholden to it, but I also think it's stupid, but it is important, and trying to come to terms with that. And I feel like that is something we did here, is you present those ideas and you kind of throw them around in the blender and you come to new conclusions, and people will give you new ideas into your brain, and it helps you get a better understanding that you can better come to your own conclusions about something.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for many, many weeks now. I don't know how much you remember, but Ben, you mentioned before about the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
That had come up before.
That's what spawned this entire conversation.
Jurassic Park, like, those aren't canon dinosaurs.
They have frog DNA, it's okay.
But no, it was like dinosaurs as you know them, as these giant scaly murder beasts, aren't actually what dinosaurs at all. and we made dinosaurs into our media even though they were a real thing that was around. But it's like, well, if we know dinosaurs aren't that, then what are those things? What do we call those? I'm someone who's very big on like having words for things. And it's like, if those aren't dinosaurs, what are they? And then this guy over here, Brad, just freaking cranks his dad joke knob up and says,
well, if the dinosaurs with feathers are dinosaurs, then those are dinosaurs.
and I just lose my mind because he just I'm happy we have this on recording. Like, just knocks it out of the park, like right out of the gate. Doesn't even, no sweat, no effort, no build up, just hitting dingers. But yeah, like that's that thing, and like it comes. I feel like this is a good full circle moment as we're having to wrap up. And Ben's saying it's just like we will never know in quote unquote in reality canon what a dinosaur actually looks like.
The moral of the story is that you can't know.
And I think that's why I feel like that's the moral of canon. Part of canon is here is a thing because it is made up that it has, the box has dimensions that we can know, and that's nice because it's scary to think about all the things in reality that we can truly never know. And again, I don't think that's a conscious thought, but I think it helps. I think it's one of the, lizard brain chemical things that formulates this, like, our subconscious feelings about canon.
So maybe, caring about canon can be a good thing.
I'm surprised to say I agree.
Yeah.
But maybe don't get too deep into it.
Like with all things, you need to remain flexible.
Have moderation. Yeah, flexibility and moderation, I feel like, are two key lessons I almost always come to when I record these podcasts.
There's room for two Full Metal Alchemists in this world.
Well, I disagree, but maybe that means that Disney did the right thing, where they said, you know what, this stuff isn't canon anymore, but it's still here.
I mean, you still had your, like, that's the thing of you still had your experience with it, and it means whatever it means to you.
Yeah. Disney didn't tell me, hey, you can't enjoy that stuff anymore.
I mean, if you died before the prequels came out, Jar Jar Binks never happened.
What a world.
I said if you died before the prequels came out, Jar Jar Binks never happened.
Who's that?
In
Prequels
your earthly
aren't
canon.
Prequels aren't
Oh,
canon.
you're doing a bit. I see now. Man, I feel like we've all...
Are we done?
I think we're done. Wow.
Well, this was my first podcast ever, so I think
You did a good job.
I think that was good.
Okay, I
We have
guess
to plug stuff, right?
taking my job from me. Okay, I guess.
I'm sorry.
Oh, we said to be official.
Don't know what I'm doing. I
God,
just said
Dad.
this was my first time.
Ben, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I have my own podcast. It's called Words About Books. It's available wherever podcasts are. You can check me out on Twitter at WABpod.
And I should say, I've been listening to it recently. The episode about the expanded universe, the Star Wars expanded universe, was very good, and I enjoyed it. And if
thank
you
you.
liked this particular episode about canon, that's a good follow-up episode.
Even if you didn't go listen to Ben's podcast, I've listened to it. It's really good. He's a lot smarter than me. He's a lot more... Okay, I'll shift that because you're loud. He's a lot more well-read, and he comes out... It's really exciting recording with you two because I've been recording with the same two people that I know very well, but it's cool having a different dynamic. Like
Different energy is really refreshing.
I really dig it. So yeah, no, go listen to Words About Books
Words About Books.
on anywhere podcasts can be podcast.
Anywhere.
Cool, go check it out. It's a good time. Brad,
Yeah,
podcast baby, what do you have to plug?
Yeah, I mean, this was good. I wanna do this kind of thing again.
You got the plug now.
I don't, like I said, this is my first one, so I don't have anything else right now. But
Who knows?
Ben and I were talking about this earlier. At some point in the next couple months, I am going to do a podcast about isekais.
Yes, we've been
So-
man. We'll do a send off. We'll do a prototype episode here and send it off
Yeah.
into the world. Because this man, if there was ever a man that knew more about isekais, it's
is not.
this man.
There
If
is
you've
no
met
other
somebody
man.
who says they know more or have read more, they are a liar. Report them to the police about lying
If you know
and
anybody...
discredit them.
If you know anybody who knows more about isekai than Brad, it's probably Brad reincarnated as that person.
Oh yeah, transferred. Did I went to another world and then died there and came back.
Yeah.
Multiple levels.
Senpai isekai. What do we call him?
Do we ask people to like submit their isekai questions?
We'll do that in a lead up later. If we've got anybody that knows about Isekai listening, so I don't know, maybe. But no, we'll have to keep an eye on that. That sounds like a fun time. And I'm me, you know me, I'm still Kermit the Grog. I didn't change, I promise you, I'm still canon. And here, and ending the show. So thank you, Ben and Brad, for joining me, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!